The first time I saw him, he was standing at the end of my bed, silhouetted against the moonlight. I was frozen with fear, unable to move or make a sound as he advanced towards me. Then he spoke, his voice a raspy whisper. "Don't be afraid," he said. "I'm here to play a little game." And that's when I noticed the tiny plastic army in his hands. They were marching forward, their painted eyes gleaming in the dim light. I screamed, and he smiled, a wide, toothy grin that promised pain and torment. "It's too late," he hissed. "The hunt has begun." My name is Riley Carter, and this is my story. It all started when I moved into my grandmother's old house. It was a sprawling Victorian mansion with dusty rooms and cobwebbed furniture. I didn't know it at the time, but I was about to become the new chapter in its bloody history. One night I was awoken from a deep sleep by a noise in my room. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding like a drum solo. That's when I saw him standing there at the end of my bed, illuminated by the silvery glow of the moon. In his hands he held an army, not of men, but of toys, soldiers, hundreds of them, their tiny plastic faces twisted into grimaces of war. The leader, or I assume the leader, was a general. He had a plumed hat and a face that was a grotesque parody of a military officer. I could see his lips moving, but I couldn't hear what he was saying. Only the faint glint of moonlight on his painted teeth. Then the general spoke, and his voice rasped like gravel on bone. "Do you see me?" he asked, his eyes boring into mine. I wanted to scream, to run, but I was paralyzed with fear. "I am the collector," the general continued, his voice echoing strangely in the vastness of my suddenly silent room. "And you, my dear Riley, are my newest acquisition." That's when the other soldiers stirred, their painted eyes gleaming with a malevolent light. They began to stir, to shuffle, their tiny footsteps drumming on my hardwood floor like the advance of a ghostly army. I cowered under the covers, my whole body trembling, my mind screaming at me to run, to hide, to do anything, but stay there in that suffocating darkness and listen to the steady advance of those tiny, deathly footsteps. But then the general stopped. The shuffling of the soldiers ceased, and a heavy silence descended on my room. I peeked out from under the covers and saw the general standing at the foot of my bed, his tiny hand outstretched. "Come," he beckoned, his painted lips curling into a grotesque smile. "It's time to play." I refused to move. I refused to play his game. I stayed there huddled under the covers until the first rays of sunlight crept through the curtains and chased away the darkness. As the days passed, I tried to convince myself that it had all been a dream, a particularly vivid nightmare brought on by the stuffy atmosphere of the old house. But then I would wake up in the middle of the night, my heart hammering in my chest, the memory of the plastic army and their terrifying leader burned into my mind. Then one day, while exploring the dusty attic of the old house, I found them. Hundreds of little plastic soldiers, their painted eyes staring blankly ahead, their ranks broken and scattered. And at the front, a general, his plumed hat askew, his face a mask of cruel amusement. It was then I knew I wasn't safe. My nightmare had become reality. He was playing for keeps. The game had begun, and in my worst nightmare, I knew I was going to lose. Every night the general led his army, every night they marched into my room and I had to pretend to be asleep. I pretended to be nothing more than a rag doll, lifeless and inanimate. I endured their scrutiny, their whispers, their threats, each night hoping that somehow in the morning I would wake up and find it all to be a dream. But it wasn't a dream. It was a torment, a waking nightmare. And as the weeks turned into months, I grew thinner. My skin stretched tight over my bones, my eyes hollow, haunted. I became a living corpse, existing only to serve the whims of a maniacal general and his plastic legion. Will I ever escape their clutches? Will I ever break free of this nightmare? Or am I doomed to live out my existence as a prisoner in my own home, hunted every night by an army of plastic soldiers and their cruel, unyielding leader? Thank you for listening. Did you enjoy the story? If so, please show your support. Until next time, remember, some nightmares never end.